All right, hi guys. So today we're going to be talking about the obligations and responsibilities of citizens. On page 10 in your workbook, in the space between the vocab list and the chart that says obligations and responsibilities, and that empty space between those two things, go ahead and copy this definition, because the one that's in the workbook, it's good. That's what common good means, but it's a little bit too wordy, and so I felt like we should kind of shorten it up a little bit. If something is for the common good, that means it is something that benefits everybody, not just one person. A good example that you probably see in your life would be like in the cafeteria when people are cutting in line. It benefits that one person to cut in line because they get to their food faster, but for all the people who've been sitting there waiting, not so much. And if everybody cut everybody else, then that would just cause chaos and people would get upset and angry, and that just wouldn't work. In your life, you probably have things called obligations, which are things that you have to do kind of or else. Maybe that's chores, for sure homework, but there's definitely just some kind of like consequence or punishment if you don't do that obligation. It's different from a responsibility. Responsibilities are things that are just kind of helpful, like cleaning up and things like that. Things that necessarily, if you don't do it, you won't necessarily get in trouble, but it definitely helps out everybody else if you do it. And a lot of times from these obligations and responsibilities, there are certain privileges that you can get, like maybe more screen time or hanging out with friends, and things like that. And that's in your daily life. As civilians or citizens, you also have responsibilities and obligations as well. Citizens owe their loyalty to their government, and those are things like obligations and responsibilities that we're going to talk about. And because you do those things, there are certain other things that you're entitled to, like the protection of the government. Those are your privileges. Citizenship is something that's been around for a very long time. It started way back in ancient Greece, and over history, it just kind of spread out. And every country has their own different version of what citizenship in that country looks like, and what the citizens have to do, the different obligations that they have to do, looks different in every country. For example, when I was in college, I had a couple of friends who were both from Singapore. It was a brother and a sister. Singapore is a very small island country, and so their military is just not very big. So to kind of make up for that, it's an obligation as a citizen of Singapore that once you graduate high school, you have to serve in the military for 2 years. And that's just one of the obligations in their country to be a citizen there. But every country is different. In the United States, it's changed a lot too. In the very beginning, you had to be somebody like this guy. You had to be male, white, and own property in order to participate in government and vote, which is now something that every citizen is able to do. Over time, it changed. In the 1800s, we made it so that you just had to be white and male to be able to vote and participate. In the 1860s, when the 14th Amendment was passed, we made it so that those who had previously been slaves could now vote. In the 1920s, women got the right to vote, and the most recent change to voting is probably in 1947, when we made it available to Native Americans to be able to vote in elections as well. On page 10, go ahead and write down this definition inside of the box that says obligations. Obligations are duties of citizens. They are something that a citizen has to do. They simply must do it, or they can be punished by the law. So there's a consequence, there's a punishment when it comes to something being an obligation. Whereas with responsibilities, these are things that just people should do. They don't have to do it, but they should. There's not a punishment if they don't perform their responsibilities as citizens. To kind of test out, and keeping those two definitions in mind, to test out how well you know, you're going to now go on to Google Classroom, and if you haven't already, complete the obligation or responsibility assignment using those two different definitions. If you have any trouble or if you need any help, just let me know and I will see what I can do.